Today, I will show you how I made a realistic-ish ghost girl from Lethal Company. But first, here is a crappy animation rendered with Eevee. The skipping animation is referenced from the original ghost girl from the game and is an indicator that she is about to attack someone. Oh, here she comes. She is about to one-hit whoever can see her if she gets too close. Alright, here we go. So to model anything, the first step is to start blocking out the shape of what we are trying to make. I am using the primitive called the default cube, splitting it in half and giving it a mirror modifier. That way I will only have to focus on one side, which makes this step easier and faster. I am now extruding and adjusting shapes so that they will cater to the silhouette of my character, which I will edit and adjust later. Now I am going to block out the shape of the fingers with a method called polymodeling, and that gives me better control of the form and direction of this process. Now same thing with the feet, but I am spending more time refining the shape while in blockout because it is easier to control the form and silhouette of the feet, which is a complex structure. Then refining it later as I add more geometry. Not too bad. It doesn't look that good, but remember that we are still in the blockout process and that the shape and form is the most important even when having lower polygons. Alright, now I am refining the shape of the head, making it more rounded, editing the vertices in edit mode. This will act as a base for me to sculpt primary details later on. As you can see, I also introduced subdivision, which will smooth out the entire mesh, giving me a better idea of what the base will look like. The topology is good because we have carefully taken that into account while polymodeling since the very beginning. Whilst I am doing that, I have been slowly gave anatomical landmarks such as the occipital bone, elbows, armpits, trapezius, etc. Now I went ahead and blocked out the dress while the mesh was still low poly. I just extruded from the base mesh and adjusted it to make it look like a dress. Alright, since I am happy with how things were going, I thought it would be a good time to separate the head so that I can localize the geometry that I will add a lot of from the dynamic topology setting in sculpt mode. Then sculpting the newly separated head mesh and giving it bony landmarks such as the brow ridges, each sockets, nose, lips, and ears. Then adding the eyes as spheres, which will actually help me in sculpting, and adding the eyes as early as possible will make the blockout process better, since it will make the proportions clearer and more accurate. I know this looks quite terrible, but that is okay. I am more focused on actually having the primary shapes there, making them easier to read and examine, and to refine them even more later while adding more and more polygons. Alright, as you can see, I have just turned dynamic topology back on, giving it a higher value, which will give me the option to actually sculpt the finer detail while still being able to refine the entire shape. Okay, so I have been slowly refining the head, slowly but surely off camera. It has way more polygons compared to the rest of the body, but that is actually a good thing because I will be vertex painting the head. And vertex paint needs a lot of geometry for it to appear more clearly. And I am vertex painting it now to give me a better idea on how the final mesh would look like with final textures. And of course, I am still able to adapt and drastically change the mesh whether I am happy with how the vertex painting step turns out. Time to block out the hair. I just went ahead and added a new default cube, positioned it on the head area, poly modeled it to look more like the hair from the ghost girl. Then I sculpted it using Dinipo, which gives me a faster way to get to the shape I want. Alright, so I have placed hair cards off camera. Hair cards will save a lot on polygons compared to particle hair systems where one strand has its own geometry and volume, which is not ideal because this model is meant to be a game-ready asset. Now I am happy with how the base mesh is looking. Eve decided to retopologize the head, making sure the most important loops are there and adding them first. Then I will just fill the entire mesh once all of the important loops for deformation have been accounted for. This is a very tedious task that requires a lot of practice, patience, and discipline. This is a very technical aspect of 3D and is one of the most notorious and hated processes by 3D artists and would rather outsource this step to somebody else or use an auto-remesher. This step is very important since it will determine the look of the low poly mesh, and depending on the quality of the retopology, it will determine the overall quality of the asset. Halfway into the retopology of the head, I'm still refining and sculpting some areas like the ear here, in case the ear would be more visible in some instances. I didn't spend too much time on it since I know that it will be not that visible to the camera since it will be covered with hair most of the time. Alright, fast forward to completing the retopology stage. Time to UV unwrap the mesh, and depending on the quality of the UV unwrap, the better the texel density and resolution of the textures will be, resulting in a more intuitive and faster texturing process. Boom. Hair, body, eyes and clothes have been completely modeled and the low poly has been established. All that is left to model is the teeth. I am using AutoRig Pro to give this facial animations and have this asset be able to have expressions and potentially be able to talk and integrated to have facial motion capture for VR, etc. This isn't the most accurate teeth model, but I am only adding it as a complement to the facial animations, with the goal of it not being so bad as it becomes too distracting and pulls away from the overall quality of the asset. You are seeing it in the later stages of modeling here, but I essentially did the same steps as I did in previous parts of the mesh such as the body, face, etc. Basically blocking out important shapes first, refining while adding more geometry resolution, and then retopologizing it and UV unwrapping after, preparing it for texturing. Did one last test with shape keys. I am trying to gauge how it would look with deformations and diagnose whether I should tweak the mesh more or not. The shape keys would be removed later though, since I am using AutoRig Pro in place of that. We have finished texturing, and this is the final look of this game-ready asset rendered out. I think I did okay, and the ghost girl ended up looking quite scary. How did you think I do? What could I have done better? And who would you like for me to make realistic versions of next? Please comment down below. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. See you next time.